First up on the weekly news, Roundup not safe for F-Droid. Oh boy, if you guys caught this article here. I first saw it over there on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it this week from Brian Lunduke, and I did not actually watch his specific take on the video, but I did get a chance to dig through a lot of things. Of course, the brief executive summary is they had marked Bible apps as not safe for work, and then a giant debate ensued, and then some people are saying, well, if you're going to do Bible apps, you may as well do the Quran as well. Of course, the Muslims seriously objected to that, and you don't want to make the Muslims mad, and so I think in the purpose of all interest of fairness, they ultimately did reverse course on their decision, but let's go ahead and dig into what happened and why I think it happened and why I'm sorry guys, as a Christian who uses the Bible apps available for download off of F-Droid, I do not think that this is a malicious mark. I'm going to explain why here in a minute. But let's go ahead and get into it. It all started with user Align-Su, and I'm just going to use that name. If it's not mispronounced, my apologies. And he says, well, we need to have we need to mark Bible apps as not safe for work. That is kind of what it is for app update, choose the apps, whatever. Approval is optional. And then this basically, initially it passed through, and they did, and several Bible apps were marked as not safe for work, and then a whole lot of debate ensued. Obviously, the more atheist groups like, yeah, look at all this horrible stuff in the Bible, pointing out a bunch of stuff, and then somebody's like, well, you got to do it to the Quran too. Look at all this evil Quran stuff. And then, of course, the Muslims come in, oh no, those are all out of context. Killing the infidel is out of context. All right. But anyway, and Linsu actually says when somebody talks about this, he says, oh yeah, I forgot to check the not safe for work definition, which I assume to be about porn content. So he literally wanted to mark the Bible as porn content. Like, the Bible is the one source against it. It does not promote porn or violence. We got to mark it safe for work as promoting porn and violence. Is this malicious? No, I don't think it's malicious. I just think it's an ignorant person who's never read the Bible and did not consult anybody who actually holds the Bible or the Quran or any other religious texts as sacred at all. So they say the marked app may contain nudity, profanity, slurs, violence, intense sexuality, political incorrectness, or other potentially disturbing subject matter. And he says, I'll mark the Quran apps later. So he marks the Bible stuff. And this guy comes in and says, hey, if you're flagging for violence, you should flag every shooting game as well. And so you'll see where this is going. Every app's going to be not safe for work now. Unless, of course, you want to check the weather. Of course, Lord forbid you download that in Texas without an ID, which, by the way, F-Droid does not qualify under that Texas law because you do not need accounts, and the Texas law specifically requires an account. All right, this guy says, I don't think it's right to add not safe for work, flag this game as well, so please don't turn F-Droid into Minecraft chat censoring system. And so a lot of discussions in there. This is a few more people about the Quran, and then this is probably a Muslim, or at least a pro-Muslim, saying, oh, that's all out of context. You can talk about all the bad stuff in the Bible. The guy that did not want to mark the Quran as not safe for work definitely agreed with marking the Bible as not safe for work. Go figure. All right. But of course, here's some other ones. These are some from the Bible. If a man has sexual relations with a man as he does with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They are to put to death. Their blood will be on their own hands. Of course, that is a verse against incest. I'm sorry. This is a verse against homosexuality. There are in the same chapter where that comes from. There are really homosexuality. It covers a couple verses in that chapter. The whole chapter is about sexual sin entirely, mostly about incestual and bestiality cases. Then in Genesis, they're actually talking here about the tradition of that time, which was even reiterated in the Mosaic Law, although not onto the New Covenant, about a man would carry on a family for his brother if he died without children. So of course, those are some of the verses people were picking out. And then there's a lot of debate that ensues, and some of these things The old books usually have contradictory in different parts, and it is expected that the value from 2,000 or 3,000 years ago is not appropriate in modern times. Users get a warning about that, and they can choose to read it or not. That's him defending the entire idea. And then this guy here, he has some mention saying, labeling holy books of multiple faiths in the same groups as things many said faiths deem objectionable, such as promoting violence, for example, is probably unintentional, but still likely offensive. This is why I think that this guy put this out there, mostly out of ignorance. He's probably a person that has no experience in any form of faith tradition at all, and did not want to, basically he's looking at because of, well, look, there's a bad verse in here. We're going to mark it not safe for work. But let me defend him for a brief moment. If you happen to work for a Muslim company and you are in a Muslim country and you download a Bible app and you're reading it, that could very well get you fired or persecuted. So it might actually meet that definition. In fact, that is why the one I use, which is the And Bible Study app available on F-Droid, not marked not safe for work, that actually has, it very, very explicitly does not make any internet connections without giving you pop-up warnings first, because they recognize that downloading some of the things, like some of those Bible translations, downloading some of those could very well land you in trouble in persecuted countries. And that is something to keep in mind, although is that the spirit of not safe for work? Probably not. But to defend them briefly for a brief moment, he says at the very least, reconsideration is due and genuine user input is necessary. Matthew Reese says it's not F-Droid's job to be theologians or scholars. It's dumb that these apps are being considered for not safe for work tag, but if they're going to do the Bible, they had better be consistent and also do it to the Quran. And I agree. And of course, my general take, just to lay my cards on the table already this early in the video, my general take is anything that is a traditional holy book, we're talking older than 200 or 300 years ago, should not have any form of tag at all. It's a historical religious text. Leave it alone. Everybody understands it's a historical religious text, and if there's a problem with that, well, y'all should know about that already. When I downloaded it, of course, I use F-Droid, and I have F-Droid. Actually, I don't use the app itself. I just go onto the website and manually download things I want to install, and I put it on my Graphene OS phone here. And when I did that as a Christian, I hated Bible Gateway. I hated the various other big Bible apps. They're all connected to horrible people, and they were like Bible Gateway. I'm not sure if it still is, but in its early tradition, nearly everybody on the board were Amway distributors. Believe it or not, it's crazy. And the YouVersion Bible app, that's run by a giant mega church with horrible theology. So while they're not polluting the text, I really don't want to give my data to a lot of these companies or these organizations. And I loved the fact that for the first time I could grab a Sword module app and download the translations that I wanted to use. And, for me, it was like, I don't really care. I know what I'm downloading, things like that. But the same thing, if I were a Muslim, I would go there looking for the Quran apps. It might bother me if I go to see that and see a not safe for work label, because we'll see what their definition of not safe for work is in a moment. This person down here, he's actually says that, hey, my app was marked, the Bible verse app. He says, in general, why add Bible apps at all? Never heard from anyone that it's not safe for work. Also on Reddit, there you go. Let's make an argument from Reddit. That's how you know we've gone down the rabbit hole. On Reddit, they do not use the not safe for work tag for religious subreddits. According to your policy, also all news, messenger apps should also get the flag. Also, a lot of games, due to their user can read about violence and could send sexual material. This is stupid. Please revert that commit. And so one of the factors to keep in mind with this right here is some of the Bible apps do have the whole Bible. Some of them, like YouVersion, don't have any Bibles in them at all. You have to manually download them. And in further responses to this, they said, oh, no, news apps don't apply because that's just news. Well, the problem is that you get the same type of content. In fact, the news more often tends to show some of these in some of the more positive light, at least for the sake of getting reviews or getting clicks and views and ratings and things like that. Matthew Miner, it's rather unconscionable this was ever approved and frankly disqualifying for a maintainer. It fails to meet the plain meaning of not safe for work. It is completely the opposite, the label displayed on the app, of essentially promoting porn, and the technical definition is essentially things that people might be ashamed of using, is also both a terrible definition and still completely inapplicable here. It seems unjustifiable for any reason but bigotry. And so he's basically arguing that, yeah, you just did this because you don't like the Bible. And I'm not sure I don't think that that's the reason why they did it. Corey here had some good points, but he also was an unhinged lunatic, and he appears all over this. I think I highlighted some of his in another thread. So this one here, hello, can you please tell me how Bible apps promote violence and pornography? Last time I checked, the Bible is against these two actions. This just seems like an action done out of hate for Christianity, so please do tell. And so this is kind of gets this. This guy here actually had an app called WG Tunnel, which is for WireGuard, allowing you to use the new WireGuard protocol for VPNs. He removed it. He removed his app entirely, and when I was doing my research the other day, it's not there. Of course, he's not marking this at all. He simply says this was done foolishly and maliciously, and he wants the policy reversed and a public apology for such actions. As of right now, the policy has been reversed, but I did not see a specific public apology. So if you like WG Tunnel, you might just have to go to his GitHub page and grab it. Now, here is they did start a new thread talking about the definition of the not safe for work anti-feature. And so in here, they have a lot of back and forth. This is what I thought Corey made a good point on. This is absurd. Why is an open source app store trying to act as a moral arbiter? The Bible is a religious text, not adult content. You had to know labeling not safe for work would cause backlash. And I agree. I think that the Lin Su, who started all this mess, I just think he was... Maybe he had a really bad day and had a total brain meltdown that day. I don't know. He says, if you're going down this path, I'll assume you'll tag the Quran, the Talmud, basically the religious books for all these other ancient religions. Now you're now volunteered your project to decide what counts as literature, religion, philosophy, and theology. And of course, a lot of it, he just kind of goes in and hopes the whole project dies and blah, blah, blah. And I don't like that. So we'll ignore the rest of that. Carl says, labeling religious text as not safe for work has destroyed my trust in F-Droid. I've uninstalled it. I can just get the open source apps from GitHub. And so they did cause some damage to their brand. They caused a lot of damage from their brand. Peter here, unfortunately, I cannot give a good response on how to define not safe for work. I could be wrong, but when I hear that term, my understanding is the content is inappropriate, most often not educational, and often something that is taboo or looked down upon by society at large. Well, again, if using that definition, it definitely is taboo to be a Christian these days, as Jesus said it would be, by the way. But nevertheless, I get what he's saying. He says, so I think it is better if the definition of not safe for work would be tailored with that in mind to make sure religious works like the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, and others are not labeled as not safe for work. And I agree. Any ancient religious text. Now, if you come up with a brand new, the Bible of the flying spaghetti monster right now and want to release it, no, if there's objectionable content, you might consider flagging that. It is not a historical ancient text. But the Quran, I'll consider it historical ancient text, although I disagree with it. The Torah it is of the Jewish faith, like the Talmud. The Bible, obviously, is the one I would agree with. And then there's some other ones from other ancient religions. I don't care. Mark them all as perfectly safe historical and or religious texts, and I'm okay with them all being there because, frankly, if you read all these and compare it to the Bible, there's really no comparison. H still says it's disappointing to see F-Droid pulled into ideological and religious debates, and I agree with that. Furthermore, to merge requests which cause religious text to be labeled not safe for work has been reserved. F-Droid is actively reviewing the not safe for work tag and the inclusion policies. So that is kind of what they are doing. This is actually the post for the WG tunnel removal request. And as of yesterday, there was no apology on there. Let's see if there's no further updates on this. This mention here is new. Let's see. App update. Let's see. So policy clarification, where it said clarification is being discussed, only appropriate classifications. Okay. Yeah. So hopefully it does come back. We need good open source apps there. I did look into the user himself. The user itself, there's nothing I found in here that was objectionable. Nothing in here that screamed militant atheist. Nothing in here that screamed Christians are bad. Nothing in here at all. My take of this, I think he is just a project maintainer. He is one of the ones in here looking at things and verifying codes and doing stuff. I think for the most part he's doing a decent job. I also just think that he did a really boneheaded, short-sighted thing here. And this is, of course, the Bible verse app, the one that was asked, and you'll see the only anti-feature is non-free network. That's because all this one does is grabs you information by powered BibleGateway.com. So that's why it's listed. It is not listed as an anti-feature. This right here is why they did this. This is what caused him to have his brain meltdown. Okay, you'll notice that that original thread was how long ago? Let's see. Where is the original date? 2 weeks ago. So this article came out just a couple of days ago, right around the time the controversy was brewing. So presumably the background team, including most likely Linsu, is in the background of this discussing what's going on. The problem is that F-Droid has to examine 3 major laws in the EU that it might have to respond to. And in looking at this, I think that Linsu's looking at all this going, we better mark some of these things with what I perceive as objectionable content, because we do not want to have the eyes of the EU forced upon us, because you see what the EU does when their funds are low. They just find a violation for Facebook or Microsoft or Apple, and it's like, there's our billions of budgetary deficit. We just accuse one of the big techs of something, and F-Droid cannot survive if that happens. And I think that this is why they did that, as wrong and short-sighted as it was. So I think they did the wrong thing for the right reason. And what they did here is they're looking at UK's Online Safety Act, the EU Digital Services Act, and the Digital Markets Act. And they have to make sure that they are positioned inside of these frameworks so that they are not targeted by politicians. Otherwise, the entire project dies. So the frameworks redefine accountability for online platforms. The article outlines how F-Droid fits into these legal frameworks, what our current obligations are, and how we are reviewing our practices and maintaining legal resilience without compromising our core mission. Now, I think one of the challenges is in some EU nation states, they might actually consider the Bible not safe for work. I don't know. But that being said, should that be the case, and is that a hill that F-Droid's going to die on? Now, that should definitely be a hill that any ministry is going to die on. I mean, any ministry that does not die on that hill, you are a heresy and go away. Okay, F-Droid we're just a store here distributing verified open source apps. We're not going to die on the hill of the Bible or the Quran or any other ancient religious text. I get that. I understand that. That's why I'm not as critical of F-Droid as some people are. Especially being a crazy right-wing Christian extremist, as I'm often accused of being. And so does it matter? So their question is, and they brought in a bunch of lawyers to look at all these laws. Does it apply to us? They say for the F-Droid App Store, the answer is nuanced and reassuring. We are not considered a very large platform. They do not run user-to-user services, and they do not process payments or track users. For this reason, they do not tend to fall under any of these laws, except their forum. Their responsibilities remain particularly transparent and around documentation and process. So the UK the UK Online Safety Acts, they say they do not meet either of their criteria. They do not host user accounts, and they do not function as a general purpose search engine. And this, by the way, is the same thing that gets around the Texas law. The fact that the Texas law does not apply to F-Droid. I think I heard Louis Rossmann mention that the Texas law applies to F-Droid. It does not. The Texas law explicitly states you have to be managing user accounts, and F-Droid it doesn't. So I hope that he corrects that record, digs through the law. It is in there, and we actually covered that point when we discussed the law last week. But by the way, you should check out his brand new project where he is doing, he has actually released some more information about their bounty program for unlocking things. So he's doing great work over there. I'm just pointing out he does great work. I don't hate Louis Rossmann. I think he does amazing work. Totally awesome stuff. He just got that one thing wrong in that video. F-Droid does not apply to the Texas law because there's not user accounts involved. And that's how any app store, by the way, can get around it. They just open it up without user accounts. If Google just said, no more user accounts to download apps, they're free. They're free. That would be awesome. All right. So according to Legal Review, documenting our legal position on non-accountability, they basically have to do a couple things. One of those is they're adding a report button on GitLab, report the bad conduct, basically it's the snitch button. You need the snitch button. You need to be able to weaponize yourself against your other citizens, get on the good side of the government, identify the bad people. That's how those crazy inner parties worked from 1984, by the way. So they're complying with the intention of the act. They do not discuss illegal, harmful, or mature topics in the forum. Of course, the forum is the exception to the rule they mentioned. Here's the EU Digital Services Act that does not meet any of the requirements. They're not a for-profit organization. They do not monetize user data. They do not function as a social media, and they do not have more than 45 million users. So that's good. They do not meet it. But they still do need to have a way to flag content, so the snitch button covers that. They have to review whether any content they host could violate EU law, and I think that this is really why they mark some of those, because the Bible does have some interesting verses. I mean, there was at one point in time, there's a list of verses, and I didn't see those again. People objecting. I was so bummed, though, nobody mentioned Ezekiel 16 and Ezekiel 23. You want to talk about horrible chapters in the Bible, those ones there, I know people that won't talk about those chapters because of how explicit they are. All right. But that being said, even still, God is being provocative in those for the purpose of saying, do not engage in this type of behavior. It's the Bible's equivalent of dropping an F-bomb, effectively. I know. Stay with me, guys. Don't flip to Ezekiel 16 yet. Just hold still. All right. And then content regulation. This is really where they get into the not safe for work stuff. They need to address how they handle not safe for work content with regulations increasingly policing mature content online, including calls for age verification. We are carefully and reevaluating what the not safe for work anti-feature label means within F-Droid, and it should continue to be applied and how it intersects with censorship, freedom of expression, and legal compliance. F-Droid does not and cannot perform age verification. Okay, so that's kind of where they are at in this. And then, of course, the EU Digital Markets Act, it does not fall under the scope of this due to the size and the not-for-profit nature of the project. The law applies to companies with significant market impact, and they don't meet any of those requirements there as well. And so what are the various anti-features? They have a whole list of anti-features. Does it have advertising, algorithms? Do you have to use algorithms and things like that? And the not safe for work is the relevant one. They say this anti-feature is applied to an app that contains content that the user may not want to be publicized or visible everywhere. And that's, I think, is pretty clear. If you are reading a Bible app, you should not be ashamed of that. If you're reading a Quran, you should not be ashamed of that. If you're really reading any of your religious texts, you should not be ashamed of that. And so that falls outside. The marked app may contain nudity, profanity, slurs, violence, intense sexuality, political incorrectness, or other potentially disturbing subject matter. This is especially relevant in environments like workplaces, schools, and religious and family settings. So how dare you tell your church you can't download the Not Safe for Work Bible app? Wait, hold on. These things don't work together. Okay. The name comes from the term, of course, not safe for work. And this is actually the list of all of them. Ooh, this is actually updated. This was actually updated today. So let's see if I can spot what's new. See if there's anything over here that jumps out at me. I don't see anything, any Bibles or other religious texts in there. I have no idea what this one is, but this mysterious E1547. Well, that's suspicious. I kind of want to click that, but it says it's not safe for work. So I don't know. So anyway, there is my take on this. I do not think it was this anti-Christian malicious thing. I really think it was just that these guys were neck deep evaluating their laws, making sure that they didn't fall under the scope of not safe for work for the purpose of all of these EU laws to not have politicians on them. They did a really stupid, really wrong thing that caused them a lot of backlash, but I think they did it for the right reason. So I'm going to go easy on them, and I hope that they survive for a long time. But that's kind of my take. I'm glad they reversed the decision. I think that they should really come out and apologize. In fact, they might even need to say, hey, maybe we need to bring on a few different people of these various religious backgrounds onto our board. But we want to talk inclusion. Let's go ahead and include some of these people that they might be able to be like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Because, you know, if they had one Christian on their board helping them make these decisions, they would not have done this bonehead thing. All right. They wouldn't be like, hey, we should mark all these Bible apps as not safe for work. And then the Christian's like, are you retarded today? And it would have solved the company a whole lot of problem. There's my thought. Let me know your thoughts down below. Again, have a look at the website, switchedtolinux.com/support if you want to help support the channel. With that, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.